Right, time for our next keynote. Let me introduce Domhnaill Hernon, Global Lead at EY's Metaverse Lab, and we're talking seeing beyond the hype cycle, understanding the hype cycle of emerging technology. Domhnaill, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome indeed. And this is a subject I always find fascinating, seeing beyond the hype of AI, as there is, well, it's extraordinary the amount, isn't it? So the virtual floor is yours, and I'll be back with some questions at the end.
Great stuff. Thanks, everyone. Just a bit of context on the work that I do. I'm responsible for the EY Metaverse Lab. So we build AI-powered metaverse experiences for EY globally, so enterprise-grade product and platform. And we do quite a lot of work on social impact and DEI as well in the work we do. So very human-centered in the types of experiences and the technology that we develop. So this idea of hype, the concept of hype in emerging technology really stems from what's called the hype cycle that's attributed to Gartner. It's been around for maybe 25, 30 years or so. And I find that not a lot of people understand the hype cycle itself, the cycle through which new emerging technologies start and how they mature, and this cycle of peak of inflated expectations where this technology is going to change the world, and then what's called the trough of disillusionment, where everyone says this newest technology is dead, then onto the slope of enlightenment, where the real use cases that add value are highlighted and investment is made with proper return on investment. And then this idea of the plateau of productivity, where the technology takes hold and it's doing what people thought it would do initially. And this cycle, every emerging technology goes through this cycle. I'll give examples throughout the slides, throughout the presentation. Maybe the timing and the shape of the cycle is slightly different for different technologies, depending on what's going on in the world and the peculiarities of that technology. Every one of those emerging technologies goes through what is showing on the slide here. And also in those vertical segments under the black curve, you can see what's called the different types of adopters in the market, whether it's innovators, early adopters, and laggards all the way at the very end. Another interesting curve to overlap on this to consider is what's called the innovation diffusion curve. And you can see that on the bottom figure with the bright blue line. This is attributed to Rogers. And this really shows you the market penetration of a technology over time as the emerging technology goes through these stages of maturation. I also think about this as a proxy for revenue generation. So when technologies are at the earlier stages in the hype cycle, or the blue line, you can see that their market penetration is quite low, and therefore your ability, the probability of you creating revenue with this technology is also low because of the limited market size. And then as the technology matures over time, as there's more penetration of that technology into the market, the overall market size increases, and any given organization's ability to tap into that market size then goes up with the maturing of this technology. And there's an interesting tipping point that occurs somewhere around 18%, where it's called this marketing chasm, or this chasm that exists in this trough of disillusionment, where some emerging technologies might not ever get over that trough. They might not ever overcome that gap. And this might cause them to not really have the level of impact that was predicted when they were going through the hype part of the hype cycle. So I spend a lot of time, and I've spent many, many years working in emerging technologies, developing the technology from the ground up, deploying it, bringing it out to market, and working with our marketing teams to understand how to best position these emerging technologies out in the market to our customers. And I find these two graphs extremely useful when you can pick away the detail at them and understand what it means from your organization's point of view. What's your organizational culture? What's your appetite for risk? How does emerging technology play into the culture of your organization? And what's the strategic vision that you have for your organization within the context of your sector? And what are all the various macro trends that are taking place from a consumer point of view, or geopolitical or technological point of view, where all this needs to come together, and you need to have some kind of a vision and a roadmap on how you implement these emerging technologies, have some kind of a deployment strategy, adoption strategy, marketing strategy. And understanding these two curves combined can be a really good start to help you put some sense around that, because it can be very complicated to address all of these trends that come together to help you make the best investment decisions. I'll talk just briefly about the psychology of the hype cycle. So, we've seen recent times technologies like the metaverse, which has gone through quite a lot of hype, and now a lot of people think that the metaverse is dead. And I'm going to talk about that in some detail later. And now we have Gen AI, which is adding to the hype of AI. And, we expect that Gen AI will also go through this trough of disillusionment in time when the early investments are not getting the returns on investment that are expected by the market and by customers and by employees. And it's just going to naturally go through the cycle. But the thing I want to talk about here is that these emerging technologies initially, when they're at the hype part of the hype cycle, are kind of presented in as if they're actually over on point 2 on the far right of that figure. Whereas the reality is that they're somewhere left on point 1. And this gap is really interesting to understand, because this gap between expectations and reality is what sets up a lot of misunderstanding, sets up a lot of mistrust, and sets up a lot of fear. Will this technology take my job? Will this technology disrupt my organization and the sector I operate in? All this fear comes from this substantial gap that exists between the reality of where the technology is today on the hype cycle versus what's been promised. And it's really important to understand this as well. And depending on, again, your organizational strategy, culture, how you leverage technology in your business, how you use this knowledge to your advantage can be really important, especially from a marketing point of view and a technology deployment and adoption point of view. So before I move on to modern emerging technologies, I want to use an example of this hype cycle of peak inflated expectations and then this trough of disillusion. In other words, peak is this technology is going to change the world as we know it, and then the trough is this technology is dead. So a really good example of this is the internet, and I'm going to play a video from 1995 to give a sense of the peak inflations at that time.
Millions of Americans own a personal computer. If you're one of them, you can now glimpse the future with nothing more than a modem, a phone line, and a few dollars a month.
Oh, that's
that little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At?
See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard it. I'd never heard it said. I'd always seen the mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
Just what is this main artery of the information superhighway?
Every business, no matter how large, and no matter how small, will be on the internet in the year 2000. It's
I don't need to play too much more of that. You get the point. This is the early days of the internet, where there was a lot of misunderstanding. Those anchors didn't even understand what the @ symbol was. And you have tech leaders talking about the vision for how this is going to change the world. So this is 1995. And then just 5 years later, and this is only one example, but we have all of these printed when paper was a thing back in the day, talking about how the internet might be a passing fad as millions gave up on it. And this is one of thousands of examples of reports and articles that I could show you where they talked about how the internet is dead. So just in this 5-year window, we go from it going to change the world to it being dead. And yet we know, with the benefit of hindsight, that the internet has completely transformed humanity, both socially and from a business point of view. So this is just a really powerful example of the hype cycle and how every technology goes through that cycle. And you really need to understand where the technology is in the hype cycle and where the technology is in the hype cycle with respect to your business, because this is a very complicated and nuanced kind of way to think about these technologies. So I've left this slide purposely blank. And I want to just talk about what the metaverse is and contextualize the metaverse against what I just showed you around the internet. So I describe the metaverse as the evolution of the internet to become more 3D, more spatial, and more immersive. Or another way I would say it is that the internet will evolve. How you experience the internet, how you interact with the internet, it will evolve to enable people to interact with each other digitally, remotely, a little bit more like how we interact with each other in the physical world. So the metaverse is no more complicated than that. And I'll show you there's lots of different ways you can experience it. But the metaverse 2 years ago hit that peak of inflated expectations. And for the last year, all the media talks about is how the metaverse is dead. And I hope, as I've shown you from the hype cycle curve and the example of the internet and many other examples I could give you around 3D printing and cloud technology and gaming technology and others, that it's inevitable that these technologies go through this cycle, and you really need to understand it, because dismissing some of these technologies could have profound implications for your business. So in the metaverse, it's more complicated than you might think doing a Google search and reading some of these media articles. There's lots of ways you can experience it. Most people think the primary way you experience the metaverse is through virtual reality goggles, where you're fully immersed in a 3D spatial environment. That is one way you can experience, but not the only way. You can also experience it through what's called augmented reality, where you see the physical world through the device and you have digital overlay that gives you information on it. And a lot of the metaverse environments that we build today, in fact, are experienced on the devices of today, 2D devices like laptops or smartphones or tablets. And they're over the web of today. But the environment that you interact with happens to be spatial, right? So in other words, as I'll show you here on this video, you can walk through the depth of this screen and you can explore this space immersively and spatially. And this means that we're building metaverse technology that's built on the infrastructure of today, the 2D web, 2D devices that we're using today. That makes it most accessible and gives you the highest return on investment, while we're waiting for these more futuristic devices and use cases to take hold in the industry more than they have done today. And then to kind of further elaborate on the nuance that you need to understand with these emerging technologies, it's never as simple as you might read through a media article or a Google search. There's far more to the metaverse than you might think. So the metaverse can be broken down today into three major classifications. One is the consumer metaverse, like the online video games where a lot of younger people are spending their time. I'll talk about that. The other is the industrial metaverse, where we have digital twins of factories and things like that, where we can optimize for productivity and efficiency. And then the next and least mature is the enterprise metaverse. That's where we think the future of work might take place and evolve towards, where from a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 basis, employees in organizations will collaborate, communicate, and co-create using these more 3D types of experiences. So I showed you on the last slide that Gen Z are a primary driver of adoption. And just to give you some kind of stats on that, a lot of people I interact with out in the world don't really understand the scale of some of this. So more than 80% of Gen Z and young millennials play online video games. Okay, so that's a staggering number. And then the gaming industry is more than 4 times bigger than the movie and music industries combined. A lot of people don't realize that. So now if you think about that, now what we have is a gigantic industry that's growing, where you have a captive audience, where this is younger audience that are native gamers. And those people that are experiencing these digital experiences out in the world more socially from a consumer point of view, they expect to come into the workplace and they expect to have digital experiences that are more gamified, that meet them where they are. And this is our kind of investment thesis, and this is a lot of the work that we're putting in EY to be able to build experiences, not just for the younger generation, for all generations, but understanding in the near term that they're the primary drivers of adoption. So to further elaborate then on the nuance of understanding these technologies and the implications that it might have for your business from an investment point of view, I could draw the 3 different metaverse classifications that I discussed on the hype cycle like this. So instead of the metaverse as one holistic concept sitting in one point on the hype cycle, you can see now that we can place the 3 different types of metaverse very distinctly on the hype cycle. And again, from a business investment perspective, a return on investment, you really need to understand which of these metaverse classifications are best suited for your business, for your organization culture, for your vision, for your strategy, and how might you best go about implementing them into your business within your sector to meet whatever business challenges you have. So there's a lot that you can get from this type of thinking in the ways that can help your business. So to expand a little on the metaverse from a use case point of view, its current superpower, and it's got a few superpowers, but its current proven superpower at scale is around delivering better learning and development environments. And one stat I love to share is that you can accelerate learning by a factor of 3 and enhance knowledge retention by up to a factor of 5. So we've built lots of different AI-powered metaverse environments that are able to bring our intellectual property, our content, our data to life and solve some of our business challenges at scale that would not be solvable otherwise. And I'll play one short bit of a video here, where this is an avatar that we've created that is powered by a large language model that is trained on EY's intellectual property. So the answers you get are EY approved answers. We do not get hallucinations unless we want to have them. And we have found this to be an exceptionally powerful tool to give out to different parts of our business and our clients, where people can now, with their voice, conversationally interact with data, intellectual property, and content.
Hi, Wanyi. How will fashion designers in the future get inspired?
Future fashion designers will continue to draw inspiration from a variety of sources. With the advancements in technology, designers will have access to virtual libraries containing
I won't
vast
play all of the
collections of
video because it's not
historical and
important
cultural
what she
fashion.
says. What's important is that the avatar only says what we need it to say, what's approved, and all this sits on a secure, data privacy instance of the large language model that we own and control, and we operate in a highly regulated environment. So we've done a lot of work to de-risk this technology when it's pushed out at scale into our firm or out into the market. Another example then I'll show you of some of the work we're doing, metaverse experiences powered by AI, is that we've scanned several of our offices in the US, and we've brought experiences to universities around the US where we're trying to attract talent. And the talent all over the US, we've had 80 university campus activations in the last 2 months, and the talent can go into a VR headset or go onto a laptop. They might be going to university in Boston, and they can put on the headset and they can immerse themselves in the office in Boston, and they'll get a sense of what it is like to work in EY office. And we have experiences that give them a sense of EY's culture, ways of working, our values, how we like to work together, and bring EY's culture and kind of brand, how presenting EY as an employee of choice to this top talent that we want to attract into our business. And then when they do join, we onboard them in through what we call the Weverse, which is a metaverse experience that we built for our employees, and we have gamified learning and development in these environments, as you see on the top right. And we also do a lot of other stuff around education and medical examples, how AI, digital twins, spatial computing, the metaverse can come together to help educate, in this case, in the health sciences, and other examples like that for health and safety in oil and gas, and the list goes on. I'm only showing a fraction here. Okay, so getting close to the end of the presentation, I want to share some thoughts on how you might get started in any emerging technology, and I use the metaverse as a prime example. So you should really research this technology and understand if it's a good fit for your organizational strategy, culture, and business needs. And you really have to treat this as being on a learning journey, and you have to really kind of question the information that you're being given from outside sources, whether it's Google search, whether it's media, or whether it's ecosystem partners. You need to be able to experiment and build knowledge from the ground up within your organization, but to accelerate on that path of impact, you should really work with proven professionals within your ecosystem or alliance partnerships. And most of the time, people don't understand with emerging technology, it can be very low cost and very low risk to build proof of concepts and test them and learn quickly, and then start thinking how the ones that work, how you scale them and integrate them into the rest of your business. But every step along the way, you need to consider how these new tools, technological tools, become extension of your existing processes. Often they're not there to replace what you're doing. They have to fit in very neatly with your back-end systems, your processes, how your people work. So you need to have a roadmap and a vision for how this gets integrated into everything else you've been doing in your business to this point. And I would say from a technological point of view, collaborating with other parts of your business is critically important. I'm in the technology part of the business, but I've had to partner with talent and our marketing teams to make sure that we can solve the right business challenges and bring this technology out into the market and into our business in the proper way through communicating the value that it will create. So just very quickly then to talk about Gen AI a little bit, it is definitely at point one at the moment. It's close to this peak of inflated expectations, maybe even slightly moving past the peak of inflated expectations. So it's definitely going to be transformative for society and for business, but there is this gap between what people expect it to do versus the reality of what it does. In actual fact, I could take that one aggregated data point for Gen AI, how it sits on the hype cycle, and spread it out over many different places in the hype cycle, depending on the use case and the different type of Gen AI technology. So it's not as simple as people would like to make it seem. It's a much more nuanced and complicated analysis that has to be done. But what I'm showing here in the green stars, though, is that you have all this hype of Gen AI, rightly so, but we also have traditional AI that's been out in the field for a very long time, 10, 15, 20 years, is proven, operates at scale, and there's a lot of business use cases that are required, traditional AI today, that are proven out there, but the key bottleneck is typically around data. So whether you're looking at traditional AI, data can be your challenge. Whether you're looking at Gen AI, data can be your challenge. So I would say for anyone that's listening, no matter what you do, you have to have a good data strategy, good data infrastructure, good data processes, Otherwise, whether it's Gen AI or traditional AI, they won't really do as much for you as they could do unless your data strategy is really powerful. Okay, so to very quickly wrap up, the key takeaways are, I do think the hype cycle is a very good framework, but it is just a framework, so you need to understand that, you shouldn't take it as gospel. You should deeply understand how it might apply to your business. You need to look at the past the hype and the negativity and make informed decisions based on your business needs, your culture, and your risk appetite. Working with your marketing teams and technology combined is really powerful to get adoption and drive impact and ROI. And whether you consider Gen AI or traditional AI, your data, your ability to access that data, operate on that data, and your selection of the appropriate use cases at the right time will determine success. So with that, I'd like to close out there. Thank you for listening. I appreciate the invitation to share some of these insights with you all, and happy to take some questions if we have time.
Domhnaill, thank you so much for that. Absolutely fascinating. And before I get to the questions that have come in from the audience, one from me. And it's a slightly impossible question. I'm sure there are many technology leaders who don't want to be left behind here. They don't want to be the laggards. But they also don't want to go too big, too early and make mistakes. How do you get that balance between the two? I know that's practically impossible to answer, but it's a real problem.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And this is actually where I spend a lot of my time, is helping business leaders make those right decisions. So what I would say is, one of my points I said is, it's all about experimenting and building up knowledge from the ground up and accelerating that knowledge as best you can sensibly with outside expertise. And if you build the knowledge from the ground up and you build low cost and low risk proof of concepts, and you test them in your business environment, and your people get to understand about the technology and how it gets deployed along the way, you will have enough embedded knowledge in your organization that when the right moment comes to make a more substantial investment, you will be much more comfortable at making that decision. And that's what it's all about. Whereas if you're jumping in, into the deep end of the swimming pool without having gone through that process, you're relying on advice from someone else, which might not be appropriate to meet your needs. Then all of a sudden, you as a leader, your entire internal brand, your ability to lead and make these investments could be under question because you could make a wrong decision. So building knowledge from the ground up, experimenting, and thinking about how these technologies integrate over time into everything else you're doing in your business is the way to de-risk that situation.
Yeah, it feels like a deeply measured response to a deeply measured issue there. Few questions coming in. Thanks here from Future Play AI. They say good presentation, Domhnaill. So yeah, thank you to them. Question here. This is hasn't got a name on it, unfortunately. Is where will the data for the metaverse's virtual spaces be stored? Will cloud technology, blockchain become the mainstream solutions for you?
Okay, I'm really glad someone asked that question. So, in the early days of the hype of the metaverse, there was a lot of confusion where metaverse and Web3 technological paradigms got completely confounded and confused. And most people incorrectly, in my opinion, thought that to do something in the metaverse, it needs to be decentralized, or in other words, it needs to be enabled by blockchain or Web3 decentralized type technology. And there was a kind of virtual land grab in some of the decentralized platforms where people were speculating that you could invest in virtual land and property and it would cause great wealth. And that really fell off a cliff, and that has proven to not have longevity. So this is a misconception that the metaverse has to be decentralized and has to be powered by something like blockchain. In fact, most 99.9999% of metaverse environments and experiences built today are built on centralized technology. And what I mean by that is the internet of today. Today's internet infrastructure, today's internet best-in-class data security, data privacy, today's best-in-class internet global scalability. I could go on. All of the metaverse environments that we build and most people are building today is on today's infrastructure and technology. So you're already launching in with all of that proven capability when you build these 3D experiences that sit on technology that was initially developed for the 2D. And it doesn't need to be more complicated or risky than that. And I think I'm really glad someone asked that question, because it's a major point of confusion from the early hype days of the metaverse, where Web3, decentralization, and metaverse, internet becomes 3D, got conflated and confused.
Donald, thank you for clearing that up as well. We are out of time, I'm afraid. Thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. Really enjoyed the examples of how you use the metaverse in training and cultural things within EY. I know people who've seen that at various trade shows and things and have spoken very highly about it. So thank you so much for joining us here at Tech and AI Live New York.
Thank you.
A pleasure.